Long days, pleasant nights, and welcome to Kingslingers, a Doof Media podcast journeying through Stephen King's Dark Tower series and beyond. I am your host, Constant Reader Scott Daly, and I'm joined, as always, by the Butcher of Up Mile Hill. It's Mr. Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
Hey, you want some cold cuts? Yeah?
No.
Get you some cold cuts.
I feel like it's been a long time since I've eaten cold cuts. When's the last time you had cold cuts?
What's the difference between cold cuts and lunch meat?
I think it's the same thing.
Then 30 minutes.
I just don't find myself having sandwich lunch meat like that very often.
I have like deli sandwiches very often, so
That's fair. Do they cut it cold? Is that why?
I think
it's called cold cut.
It's like the meat is cold. It's one of the few contexts when you eat cold meat, you know? Most of the time you eat meat and it's warm. And if somebody were to be like, you want some cold meat? You'd be like, that sounds gross. What if I slice it real thin? Delicious.
It's like the thing I've heard about mozzarella sticks. You ever heard that one?
No.
It's like, hey, you want to eat 5 string cheeses? No. What if I deep fry them and serve them with some marinara sauce?
Yeah, that suddenly sounds good.
All right, let's talk about Stephen King though. Okay, this week on the show, our series examining Stephen King's 11/22/63 continues with part 3, covering chapters 7 and 8 of the novel. Jake's time in the festering shithole that is Derry, Maine, comes to a close as he attempts to stop Frank Dunning from killing his entire family. He succeeds, mostly, and then heads back to 2011. Matt, what did you think of this week's reading?
Yeah, we give Frank a C, I think. But partial credit. This was intense. This was fun. It was as fun as it can be while being kind of horrifying and awful. But the playing with the premise is fun, where like as he's approaching his goal, things are getting worse and worse, and you're throwing complications and obstacles into his path, and he's having to be clever or lucky. And just some great kind of little twists in here. I really enjoyed this week's reading.
Yeah, I mean the entire thing with oh god, I just blanked on his name. The other guy. Yeah. I read this week's reading, I promise. Bill Turcotte. The entire thing with Bill and the kind of the way that's like long rolled through the section, but then the way it reveals itself at the end is such a shock, but in the best possible way.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I was referring to with the small twist, where it's like, it's not like it's enormously consequential, but it just, and also you're expecting there to be obstacles, right? You're expecting there to be, that's storytelling. So what's fun about it is like the obstacle is like, wait, he's on the same side as you, but he and it's at first you're just confused, and then it makes you so much more frustrated actually than if he had been, this guy's friend who was defending him, right? You're just like, God damn it.
And my result was a lot more questions that I'm sure we'll get into today, that the book doesn't necessarily directly address or even look at, but they're certainly posed by the events of how all this stuff goes down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But let's get into it. Let's do it. Before we do that, though, one more time, we're going to Bangor. I just called Derry a festering shithole. Well, we're heading to that real life festering shithole. Just kidding. I'm sure Bangor is a wonderful town. I can't wait to go there. But we still have just a couple dozen seats left for our live event on Saturday, June 15th. Oh my gosh, I almost said the wrong day. June 15th, Saturday, we're going to be there live with Robin Firth, talking about the Dark Tower, talking about Stephen King, just doing what we do, just talking, and talking to you folks. So if you are in the area and you want to come, still 25 seats left. I think we maybe have set aside like a few for walk-ups on the day, but this is it. 25 left. So get there. Head to doofmedia.com/kingslingerslive, all one word. That'll send you to the ticketing page where you can get the information on what to do there. And I think Jody showed a preview of what the poster is going to look like, because like I said last week, you've been working on the swag for this thing, and it looks awesome. If you haven't checked that out, you can head to reddit.com/r/doofmedia, and you will see a little preview of what the swag poster is going to look like. I love it. I love the design. It's really cool. It's wild that this thing we made is going to have a live event, Matt. It's just wild.
Yep, cool stuff. I can't wait.
Yeah. All right, so get those tickets. 2 dozen left. Go quickly. And let's us go to the past. Matt, just the absolute silence from you told me everything I needed to know.
I was debating whether to do, going into the past sound effects, and I elected no. Which
you elected to do absolutely nothing and just leave me hanging.
The result was dead air. I admit. Ooh,
there we go.
Yeah.
Chapter 7. Chapter 7 begins with this line: "How should I tell you about my 7 weeks in Derry? How to explain the way I came to hate and fear it?" Hey, Matt, remember when we confidently said a couple weeks ago that the book had a lot less of the narrative voice talking directly to us as if it was telling us a story? Oops.
Yeah. Whoops. Yeah. I mean, I think I'll just take credit for that blunder, because I feel like the book had done this thing at least once, and then I was like, yeah, this is not really a narrated story. And it's like, no, he's talking to us. He's clearly telling us the story. He's giving us these interstitials.
Yep.
But just generally speaking about like the way he talks about it, which like he did, Derry, I should say, that the way he talks about Derry. I do wonder, when I inevitably reread it, am I gonna carry this, more overtly grotesque description of 1950s Derry with me into that reading? I suspect yes, because it's so it's so vivid in this book, right? Like, we spend a lot of time really painting a visual and tactile picture of this shithole, as we have called it several times in this conversation so far.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I agree with you. You can't help but be influenced by Jake's view on Derry, just your overall worldview. I will say, like, I do very specifically remember we got a little bit of pushback back during it in our characterization of the pharmacist, Norbert Keene, and we were pretty rough on him in that in that story. And by the way, I think completely deserved in that story. But I also, like, all that I could think about while I was reading this week's reading and seeing the sections with Keene was like, this definitely influenced my opinion on him.
Yeah.
Like, he's such a asshole here as well. And of course it's going to, like, your image of this place and these people is influenced by every little bit of it you read. So yeah, I mean, I think you will have a slightly different read on Derry going into the next read of it, which is interesting because it's not like this is not there in the 1950s of Derry we read in it. But I do think, I'm not trying to think of the way to phrase this, I think King is writing Derry from a very specific point of view, as this incredibly scary but also incredibly magical place, because it's coming from the point of view of children who don't fully understand the scope of the evil. And it makes it unique and different versus how the adult outsider Jake just sees this place and goes, man, this fucking sucks.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about it, just since we're having this aside, is like, you're seeing the city from the perspective of these kids who have grown up there. So like, if you've grown up in a place, you typically don't like look at the sky and think like the sky was the color of piss belched out of a dead cat. It's just like, that's just the color of the sky here.
Yeah.
Like that is the sky color. And then you go somewhere else and you're like, wow, the sky looks really blue here. You don't you don't have that kind of active comparison mode running at all times. And so it's totally understandable that he would have this perception of Derry, and the kids would not necessarily. Like, I totally buy all of that.
Yeah,
it actually works pretty well.
This reminds me when I went and visited a friend out at Texas Tech in Lubbock. And I got there and And I said, "It smells like cow shit here."
Uh-huh.
And his response was, "Only when the wind blows a certain way."
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess it's fine then." But no, I mean, that's like the reality of you live in a place, you get used to all the things that an outsider will see differently. I mean, speaking of this, like I just watched the movie Civil War this past week, which is a movie I really really loved. But it's written and directed by Alex Garland, who is not an American, and he offers a unique point of view on America and Americans through this movie that perhaps a person living here couldn't quite have accomplished. And we've talked about this before, right? We talked about this with Gaiman and America when he wrote American Gods. That's another British person that had a point of view on America as an outsider coming to it. And Jake has a point of view on Derry that no one that grew up and lived here their entire life could.
Yeah, I think makes sense. I like it actually. I like that he's doing this with this character.
Yeah, me too. But I also like the reason why he hates it, which is not just all the shit we've been talking about. But it says this: it was a sense of impending failure that made me hate it, and the feeling of being in a prison with elastic walls. If I wanted to leave, it would let me go willingly, but if I stayed, it would squeeze me tighter. It would squeeze me until I couldn't breathe. So that's almost less about Derry and more about the thing that he's trying to do here.
Yeah.
And the past itself being aware that he's trying to do something here. He's not just a tourist in this town. He's trying to accomplish something that it does not want accomplished.
Right, and that does make it feel a little bit more supernatural. You know, there's nothing concrete here, but he's saying he has this sensation of the world, trying to block him, trying to squeeze him.
Yeah. So Derry sucks, basically, Jake says, but he says at least Dallas will be better because nowhere can be worse than Derry. And Matt, we've talked about sport, but I'm just gonna refresh our listeners' memory. I am a current resident of the great city of Dallas, and to Jake I say,
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, Scott, at least there's no evil clown in Dallas. But then on the other hand, at least JFK wasn't murdered in Derry. So.
Look, man, we're going to probably spend a fair amount of time talking about Dallas throughout the course of this book, but we're famous for three things, okay? We got that television show Dallas that makes everyone think that everyone in Texas always wears a cowboy hat and has a horse.
Right.
The Dallas Cowboys, who have done nothing in football since 1996, and the fact that the president got shot here. That's all we got.
Yeah, I lived in Dallas for a bit too when I was a kid, so we got that. It's got that going for it.
Have you ever been to the 6th floor museum and the spot?
No, I have not.
I think it's you have to go to the 6th floor museum if you live in this town. It's like a rite of passage, and I've been, and it's interesting. I do think it's a little weird. They have an X on the road where he got shot. That's weird, right?
So as soon as you said that, I was like, that feels somewhat obscene, but also I feel like every single person who goes to that museum is going to go, so like, if I lean out the window, so like, where was the car? And then they're going to have to say, okay, see that mailbox? It's about 5 paces. So instead of having to do that every time, they're like, there's an X there.
You're right. You're definitely right. This was just a practical thing to manage traffic and stop getting to people to just constantly wander along the road. Because it's not a small road. It's a big road. It's multiple lanes, and cars are like exiting the highway onto this road. So yeah, it's just every time I drive by the X, which is not often, I'm just like, that's a little weird.
What other King book was it where he talks about the idea of like there's a specific character who goes to that spot and looks out the window and sees like, oh, wouldn't even be a hard shot. Isn't this a King book that I'm thinking of?
I vaguely recall what you're talking about here, but Yes,
That's
I
gonna
don't know. I can't give you
okay.
specifics. It's okay. We have an audience, and they will immediately tell us what it is, and also uh, be frustrated with us for not remembering it because we get that sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember
Anytime
when we
we,
forgot the name of some audiobook readers?
yeah,
People got
if,
mad at us.
yeah. If people get mad at you for forgetting things, that's a reasonable emotional reaction to somebody just not remembering something for a moment.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. All right. So so Dallas sucks. Can't wait to go there. Gonna be great. Actually, I like my city. I don't dislike my city. We just there's not a lot like going on from a tourist perspective, you know.
Right. Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, I get a little defensive when people start saying like, "Oh, the city sucks because it's not New York City," is the implicated. It's like, shut up. Like, not every city can be like one of the three cities in the world that everybody goes to.
True. Yeah.
Like most cities are just like, yeah, it's got, there's a downtown, there's suburbs, there's a few things you can do. That's what a
We got
city is. Calm
we got a
down.
zoo.
Yeah, right. It's a fine city. It's a fine city.
It is. It is. All right. I don't know what I wanted to say about this, but I really just loved this section here. In my life as a teacher, I used to hammer away at the idea of simplicity. In both fiction and nonfiction, there's only one question and one answer. What happened? The reader asks. This is what happened, the writer responds. This, and this, and this too. Keep it simple. It's the only way home. So I'll try, although you must keep in mind that in Derry, reality is a thin skim of ice over a deep lake of dark water. But still, what happened? This happened. And this too. I don't have anything to say about that, like smart or clever or anything other than just I love it. That's such a great introduction to everything that's going to happen in these next two chapters.
Yeah. And also I just keep seeing On Writing pop in through his other books lately.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a coincidence of just the books that we've chosen, or if that's just like a theme of modern King. Is that like not only is he talking about writing in his stories, which he's always kind of done, but he's really being a little bit more clinical about it sometimes.
Yeah. It's interesting because I mean, even back to Ben Mears, he had a little bit to say about writing, I think, but
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think his aphorisms around writing have gotten sharper and more overt, maybe you could say.
Yeah, yeah. So on a second day in Derry, Jake finds Frank Dunning, who we learn, Matt, is ironically the butcher at the local market. We see he's a nice man, charismatic and friendly. He makes all the ladies laugh, all the men like him, but this man has cold eyes, we're told.
It's a really interesting portrayal, and I really find him to be a compelling villain in some ways. I guess it's just because he's not what I was expecting. The essay that we read that depicted him earlier in the story, it left us with a certain sense of who this guy is. He's this he's this monster basically, and
Mm-hmm.
you fill in the blanks because that's what we do automatically, and you just get this image of just a really kind of awful guy, even though we know almost nothing about who he was as a person from that essay. And so I don't know. I just really enjoyed the whiplash of seeing him, and it's like, oh wait, he's like this charming Lothario almost, but women want him, men want to be him type guy, and I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, yeah. And it's definitely like the type of thing where probably the only reason Jake is aware of the coldness underneath is because he knows what he's gonna do, right? Like I just think he's the type of guy that is very easy to hide the cold sociopathy underneath
Hmm.
everything. He's just
Yeah,
very good at this.
yeah, maybe so. It's interesting. This is going to sound some kind of way, so I don't know. I'm going to say it anyway because why not? Like I feel like I know that this type of person. Like I feel like I've met a few instances of the kind of person where like they're always on and they're always funny, and they always have a good good circle of friends about them, men and women. but there's something a little bit dead about their eyes, and they never have a best friend. That always bothers me. Somebody who doesn't have they have 50 friends, but they don't have any good friends. That always bothers
Sure.
me about a person.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is like King does this very often when he describes a type of person, and you just immediately go, "Yep, I've experienced this exact type of person before."
Yeah.
Jumping ahead a little bit here, but I love what we said about this is, like talking about who he is and how people like him. Does he have a story, one where his wife was either a little bit cracked or an outright villain? I thought yes. And did people believe it? The answer to that one was easy. It doesn't matter if you're talking 1958, 1985, or 2011. In America, where surface is always passed for substance, people always believe guys like Frank Dunning. So it's just this perfect picture of this guy who is just able to survive off of his charisma almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, it didn't actually jump out to me until this exact moment that he says 58, which is this year, and then 85, which is the other year that happens in it, and then
yeah, why would Jake say that year?
yeah, and then 2011, which is this year, which nicely chains together these three periods of time. I love that.
Yeah, these three distinct periods of Derry. Yep.
Now, I think this is an interesting statement from a protagonist here, because I get this is a book that's about the JFK assassination, and it's going to kind of be about America too.
Mm-hmm.
So here he's going a little hard on America. He's saying, in America, where surface is always passed for substance, people always believe guys like Frank Dunning. I mean, I feel like it's just human nature to give a pass to, outwardly likable, charismatic people. I don't know that I think of that as a uniquely American failing. It might be, maybe King is dead on here. I guess, it kind of held me up for a second where I was like, is that a uniquely American thing? I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's more what you're saying about like this is a book about America, and it's a book about one of the great American tragedies and the guy trying to reverse that. And so we're talking specifically about America. But yeah, I agree. I think charismatic people able to do terrible things and skate by because of their charisma is a human trait, not an American trait. And I think surface has always passed for substance. Maybe that bit is, and again, I don't think exclusive to America. I think a true critique of America, but definitely, I don't think what he's saying here is this is an exclusively American trait. Just that it exists here for sure.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Mm-hmm. So this begins basically Jake's nearly 6-week-long episode of tailing Frank Dunning everywhere he goes. And I just couldn't help but think about the fact that he has this incredibly conspicuous car that he's driving around in. And the beginning of the next chapter will highlight this specifically, but he's got a red, bright convertible. And we're specifically told that it differs from every other car in this town, that like the coloring of this town, from the sky to the architecture to the vehicles, is all kind of drab and dark and muted. And this guy in this bright red convertible.
Yeah. I love that. I love a lot of the minor points that are like this, where, you're reading this book, and as he's making these choices, like purchasing this car, you don't perceive it as making a mistake or taking an unnecessary risk. It's just like, oh, cool, he can afford the nice car. You should, that's cool. I'd probably do that if I could buy a bitchin' rad red convertible for $300. That's a great idea.
It's like there's probably a list of things you have to do if you ever get to time travel back to the 50s.
Yeah.
And buying like a classic, not classic at the time, but just buying buying that car, like a stereotypical 50s car, it got to be pretty high up on the list.
Exactly. So all these things at the time you accept, and then it's only later that you start to think of them as mistakes. And I think that's great, because it gives you this sort of creeping claustrophobic dread that accumulates over the course of the story.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel like him, where it's not that you have this sense of dramatic irony where you're like, you shouldn't get the red car. You're with him getting the red car, and then only later do you regret it, and you're like, oh my god, like what other stupid mistakes are we making, Jake?
Yeah.
You know, I love the effect that it has dramatically on me.
I agree. I think it's this, we talked in the first couple weeks about how Jake has this feeling of power, that being a time traveler to the past gives him, that like, he can walk into a room and know something that only God could know, which is exactly when this person's going to die, or know for a fact that he's got a good 40 years left in him. And that sense of power, I think, translates to how he just kind of moves around in the world, that he is not very afraid of people noticing him. He feels like an outsider to the world and feels like he can kind of move invisibly around in this world. And that kind of the lesson of the Derry section for Jake, I think, is that that's not true, that people are noticing you, that people are aware of you, and that people can be moving against you without you even realizing it until it's too late.
Yeah, absolutely. He's yeah, he didn't appreciate how this was going to work in advance, and so he just
Yeah.
made a bunch of mistakes the first time, which I think that, we're gonna the book. I think a lot of this book is sort of the fun and games of playing with this premise of like, you're going to
Hmm.
try to change the past, but the past doesn't want to be changed. How's that going to go? And then as he gets to try something a couple times, so okay, just to really jump ahead, like to the end, like presumably he's going to come back here and try to save the family a second time.
Hmm.
So it's like, well, what does he do differently that time? Because there's all, and then in response to him doing those things differently, like what new obstacles crop up to prevent him, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
so that's part of, it's part of the fun, is like trying to get ahead of the curve. But can you get ahead of the curve? Because the universe is just gonna, you know, warp around you. I don't know. It's a very fun premise. I really
Yeah,
enjoy
I
it.
agree. So Jake rents an apartment, moves in, and then he starts collecting his notes about Frank Dunning. Obviously, Matt, a big focus of this week's reading is the past's resistance to being changed. This is the first time, but not the last, Jake will describe the past as obdurate, which is a fun word that I honestly don't ever remember seeing before I read this book.
Mhm.
And yet, like the first time I saw it, despite not like knowing the technical definition of the word, it just sounds right. It just sounds like you just kind of know what it means just by how it sounds. And the past's obdurance shows up here just constantly, right? Like just the general feeling of how Jake feels existing in this town. And then also, like, we get this very real instance where he's trying to write down things, he's trying to write down his plans, and even that is proving like almost magically difficult to him, that like getting going on writing stuff down and starting to plan for this change that he wants to make is hard, supernaturally hard almost.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The obdurate. It's funny. I think, people who read a lot, we just sort of learn words where,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, basically I just put obdurate right next to the word obstinate in my head, and it's like close enough in meaning.
Yeah, it is like to the point where I think I've probably said obstinate when thinking
Mhm.
about obdurate, and I probably will at some point during the course of this whole book. Yeah, I think just you could
Yeah,
just file those away as similar enough. Yeah.
but connotationally, I don't think they're quite the same. But
No.
I don't know. It's just it's funny how we learn language, especially for these very rare words where
Yeah.
if you never actually like formally learned it, which, I mean, how many words have we actually formally learned versus the ones that we just picked up, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Anyway, I just think
Yeah,
it's
like you said,
funny.
especially when you read a lot, where you're just like getting the meaning of the word from context of the sentence it's in, and never like I very rarely while I'm reading like stop to check a definition on a word, even if I don't know it. I just kind of like, oh, that probably means yada yada, and then I just move on.
Yeah, total tangent, but like, do you remember being like 12 or whatever and like reading and just find like, I remember I would hit so many words I didn't know what they meant, and I wouldn't look them up. so
Yeah.
so I'd just be like, okay, this sentence probably means this, and then I would just move on.
Yeah, you just
Um,
kind of power through it. Yeah.
yeah.
There would be some where I'd like stop and ask my dad and be like,
Hmm.
what does this word mean? But yeah, for the most part, um, I would just
Yeah.
okay, I don't understand this one. Let's move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then 30 years later, that very rarely happens anymore. And when it does, I actually do bother to look it up because I'm like, wow, a rare treat, a word I don't know. Anyway,
I also think like using an e-reader has greatly increased your ability to do this, where if you're using like a Kindle, you can literally just press the word and it gives you a definition.
that's true. I mean, to speak of when I was 12, you couldn't even really easily Google a word.
No,
I would have had to go to a dictionary. So
I would have had to go to dad
yeah.
and realize only in retrospect that he probably didn't know either. It was just like going off of context
Uh-huh.
clues.
Yeah. It means obstinate. It means obstinate, son. Yeah.
Yeah. I did like it, speaking of like weird 19 stuff going on. I'm re-listening to The Dark Tower. My plan was to refinish the entire series in time for our main trip, just so I have the tower fresh on my mind as we move into that weekend and that conversation. Probably not going to happen. I'm only on drawing of the 3, and we're running out of time. But it just so happened to get this week to the point where they are in Balazar's room tower, escaping. And when Balazar sees Roland for the first time, he describes him as a face that looked like it had been chiseled from obdurate stone. And I was just on my walk listening, and I was like, it's the word.
It's it. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Also, just a fantastic description of Roland. Just perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, one thing I wanted to say, just to get back to we were talking about the obdurate past, of course, that was what spawned this tangent. And I was thinking about, like, I realized that ka probably should have been a word that popped in my head earlier than this, because, fate is this idea that is throughout all of King's works. It's everywhere. Sometimes he calls it ka and it's explicitly ka, but even in the books where he doesn't talk about ka, there's still a very strong idea of fate, and it, people accepting their fate, people struggling against their fate, the inevitability of fate. Can you change your fate? Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is throughout so many of the books that we've read. And like, what is fate if not just like the way things are supposed to go? And so when you're talking about changing the past, that's you're literally talking about changing fate. Like, that's literally what Jake is trying to do. He's trying to change fate. He's trying to change ka. He's trying to change these people's ka, and maybe his own ka. He's trying to change JFK's ka. The totally apt use of the word here, right?
Yeah.
And I guess it feels different to think about it that way, to think about it in terms of changing fate rather than just like changing the past. I don't know, that really struck me when I was thinking about the idea of the obduracy of the past.
Yeah, I think it using Ka in that place like makes the universe's strong pushback against this make so much more sense, right? It's just
Mhm.
because just as we understand Ka and we understand how Ka works, it's like you can't change it, you can't stop it. And we're about to see next week, like if he goes back to the future and how things are changed and what has changed and how that works. About to see how true that is within the universe of this book. But yeah, I like just putting fate in there instead of the past. It does kind of change. It's not that it changes things. It just illuminates the context and the difficulty of it within the Stephen King universe for sure.
Yeah, it lets us use this tool that we've already sharpened over the course of all these other books, and just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
notice, like, oh, that's absolutely what is happening here. So,
Yeah, and as Jake is kind of pondering here, speaking of Ka, we see his uncertainty about changing the past too. He works out basically that the best way to prevent these murders is to do the same thing that Al wants to do to on the JFK murder, is eliminate Lee Harvey Oswald, and he basically writes down his list of ways to stop Frank Dunning, and he gets to murder him, and that is seemingly the best one. But he's still absolutely not sure that Frank Dunning is the one responsible for it, and that like doing pre-crime causes him to hesitate a little bit here. And I love this because we get to talk about something you and I have been talking about a little bit, where he's considering, oh, what I can do is just I'll just sit in front of the house and watch him do it, and then I'll know for sure that it was him. I'll go back, I'll come back, and I'll know it's him for sure, and I'll kill him. But when he thinks this, he thinks this part right here. And one other thing, Harry Dunning's family had already died once. Was I going to condemn them to die a second time, even if each time was a reset and they didn't know? And who was to say that on some deep level they didn't? So I think that's aligned with what you were talking about with like the creation of new universes, or and things like this, and that kind of metaphysical stuff, but also just like the real present, like I can do something to stop people from having pain, and even if I can reset that pain, like it's not quite the same. And his hesitance at all that.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just really interesting line of thinking to me that I think aligns with some of the stuff you were talking about last week.
Yeah, I think that's true. And also just like for him, I think we're going to get to this a bit later, but like the longer he spends in the past, the more it becomes the present for him.
Yeah.
And so it's not like he's just like academically watching this family be brutally murdered because it's like, well, this already happened. This is the past. It's like, no, this is happening right in front of me right now. And I have a chance to stop it. And I think it becomes something different to him, even just over the course of this week's reading, as it becomes real and present to him.
Yeah. I really like this idea. And I think we're going to talk about the first 15 lines of Harry August.
Harry August.
Yeah. I think we're going to end up talking about that book a lot in relation to this book, which I know isn't fair to our readers that haven't read that book. By the way, y'all should read that book. It's excellent. But like we had a lot of conversations when we talked about that book, and I find myself thinking the same things here of like, we put these kind of arbitrary bumpers on things when we're like, okay, yeah, like people are going to die, but like we can reset that. And then so they won't have died. And like, I guess like technically, but also as you said, like in the present, in the time you're living in right now, that person over there just died, and they just experienced a great amount of pain and terror, and that ended in their death. And it's like, well, in the long term, that doesn't matter. Like it still exists. Like it's still an event that happened, even if you erase it. Like it gets really weird how we talk about these things, but right. It's really fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, it all depends on like what is the metaphysical definition of happened.
Yeah. Right.
Because there's all kinds of like I think an easy thought experiment is like if I torture you and then I administer a drug that makes you forget that I did that, and then I'm like, by the way, Scott, I tortured you, and then I made you forget, but it's fine now. Mm-hmm. Like, is it? I don't think it is, right? And that's kind of what happens if you like, do something wrong and then reset it. It's like, well, I don't know, that would make me uncomfortable if that were me.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah. I love what you said and what the book gets to about just like the past becomes the present, it becomes the now, and these things are happening now, and so it doesn't matter anymore if we can erase them.
Right.
So Jake decides he's just gonna have to kill the dude. He stops beating around the bush, just gonna have to kill him, but win. And that's kind of what he has to figure out. Regardless, he goes and buys the tool to do it, where he goes to the local sporting goods store and marvels at how easy it is to get a handgun. Just basically goes in, gives the guy cash, and gets a gun. No waiting period, no nothing. He's like, oh, wow, 1958. And I read this going, depending on where you live, 2024.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. With that done, there's not too much to do. We get this really interesting thing where he's like, he's decided he's going to do it. He knows he has to kill him. But we don't want to do it yet. He's going to wait till closer to the time. I think he basically decides that he's going to wait until the night itself. And so we have, I think the text describes this of, I seem to have entered the time killing phase of our program. And so there's not much to do but wait around. Again, I think this is being postured and presented as a dry run for the Kennedy survival attempt, which we know the time killing phase of that program is not going to last a mere 6 weeks like his time in Derry here, but almost 5 years. And then so that kind of begs the question, okay, what is this book going to be then? Is it just going to be that time killing phase? Like, are we just going to live with Jake in the past? By the way, the title of part 3 of the book is Living in the Past.
Okay,
So
love it.
that might be a little hint for you, but no, I mean, it's really evocative, I think.
I also love the phrase time killing, considering that we're, it's time travel and he's trying
Yeah.
to fight time.
Yeah, that's great.
Anyway, yeah, it's great. I like it.
Yeah, and all the things that could go wrong and happen, and it's just like, once again, we're like 200 some of the pages into this book, and we haven't really started what is the back of the book plot description quite yet. But we're already like being introduced to the possibilities and the challenges and everything that could and perhaps will happen when he begins that attempt. And it's just it's kind of like, structurally, I find this whole Derry section just like a really interesting choice, because you could say that it's like, plot wise, it's just, I needed to test to make sure that you can actually change the past. Character wise, this is Jake not doing that, but more just, this man's story made me cry, and I don't want that to happen, so I'm gonna do this thing. But just like, there's a version of the story where you can just cut this part out of it and just have him go to Dallas and just start with that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting that we don't do that here, that we focus on this and spend quite a long time on this part.
Right. Yeah. I was actually thinking about this a bit. Like, structurally, it's a very interesting story. It seems to me to be an unusual sort of time travel story, and just an unusual story in general, because this is, like a practice run for the plot. And I think the normal, like, writing advice, just basic writing advice, is like, don't do that. Like, you want to get to the plot. You want to get to the plot as quickly as possible. You want to make the reader feel like we're moving toward the resolution of the plot.
Yeah.
And not literally taking a practice run. Now I think the reason that works so well here is because, like, we don't really care about the JFK assassination yet, narrative wise. Like, it's still an abstract thing to us. It's still like, yeah, the JFK assassination. It's like, Pearl Harbor. It's the past. Whereas we care about saving this family because that was made emotionally salient to us. So
Sure,
for
yeah.
us right now, that is the plot. So I think that's the fun trick that he did, is we care about what's happening right now. And then I think, by the time we get through this section, we will have been made to care more about JFK. And then we'll, it's still interesting though, right? Because it's sort of like 2 consecutive narrative chunks, or at least 2. I mean, maybe there's more. I'm not sure.
Yeah, could be. Either way, Jake decides that it's time to start actually living here, since he's got time to kill. And after Frank Dunning heads into a bar, he decides to follow him in. Inside, he meets Chaz Fratty. How does the audiobook pronounce that name, Matt?
I don't remember.
Fratty?
Yeah, I think Fratty.
Okay, Chaz Fratty, one of the first locals that's actually nice to him, which is a huge red flag that he does not see.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really see it either, except for the fact that he telegraphs it to us pretty quickly that the guy's not on the up and up.
Yeah.
But, and it also wasn't clear to me that it should be a red flag, because we did get all that help from Bev and Richie. So the idea that there might be helpful Derryites was not totally out of the question. But
okay, but that's Bev and Richie. Like, the reason why, part of the reason why King picked those two to be the helpful Derry people is because it's Bev and Richie.
Yes, I mean, that's true. But he doesn't let you stay confused for long, because he basically tells you at the end of the section, like, didn't occur to me that this guy was lying. And you're like, oh, okay, he's lying. Okay, I got you.
I had no reason to think he was anything but what he said he was.
Right.
This is perfect. Like, wait, what? Who is he? What's going on?
Yeah.
I love that hook. It's really good.
Yeah.
So we see, Matt, in this bar that Frank is hanging out with the Tracker brothers at their table. Did you recognize the name of this?
Honestly, it only clicked when I saw it spelled for some reason. But
oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, for those that don't remember, the Tracker brothers had a baseball diamond that Eddie Kasprick not played out as much as he wanted to.
Stood near often.
Yeah, got close to. Yeah. So we see here that it's kind of sad because we kind of know, like we meet the Tracker brothers in 1958 at like the top of their empire, basically. Like they have this saved table at this bar that people come to them. They're almost like the mafia of Derry, and we know that things don't go well for them. By 1985, they're kind of, I think they're both dead. At least one of them's dead.
Yeah, I think they're dead and their place is shut down, right?
Yep. Their empire is gone. Yep.
Yep.
But not the Chaz Fratty empire, because he owns the Kitchener Iron Works, Matt. He's Jewish, and we learn that is obviously what bars him from hanging out with the Trackers, despite their fact that they're both in real estate, which is something that Jake doesn't know how to react to. Another fun 1950s piece of racist trivia for you there.
Yeah, and Jake is just like, I don't see why that would matter, and clearly did back then.
Yeah. But he thinks Jake is there to go looking for a place to build a mall. And he thinks that the Kitchener Iron Works, which he owns, would be a really great place for it. And we know, of course, Matt, that this is true because there will be a mall at the Kitchener Iron Works built before 1985 when the losers return to Derry. So King is having some fun here, I think, like with our foreknowledge.
Yeah. I also love the idea that the concept of a mall is this newfangled thing.
Oh, yeah. It's like, what does the word mall mean to you?
Yeah. Gonna go jogging at the mall.
Now they're gone. They're dead. Malls are gone, Matt.
There was a brief golden age in American history when they were malls. Yeah. The thing, like the Chaz thing is interesting because, he's not being completely honest about his motivations, but it's not like he's explicitly trying to fuck over Jake. He's really just trying to figure out what his deal is.
Yeah, that's true. He's been sent by Bill to basically go like, this guy's like clearly following Frank Dunning around, find out why. And that's really all he's doing.
Right.
And I love this conversation, right? I think this is like the way the two of them are kind of pinging off of each other, despite the fact that we know that this guy's not on the up and up, or at least not being entirely honest about why he's talking with Jake here. The energy between these two guys, I think, is really fun. Like, it's a fun conversation. Like the way they joke around and wink at each other, and I don't know. I enjoyed the energy of this whole scene.
Yeah, me too.
Chaz then goes on to tell us about Frank Dunning, including some important information about his first wife that will pay off later. And we talked about it already, but I do love the voice of the narrator coming out here. Like, that's basically priming us to be suspicious of Chaz at this point. And it does seem like, in retrospect, when you're reading it again, like, it's like, oh, I saw you looked at that guy in the mirror. Why are you looking at him? And it's like, no reason. He just seems like he's popular. And he goes, okay, let me just tell you his entire life story. And get into this is all the like the exact thing you, Jake, wanted to know about this guy. Let me just give it to you unprompted. And Jake's just like, oh, this is great. This is perfect. Yeah. This is exactly what I needed.
Right. I mean, I think at the time I might have thought that the whole, serendipitous giving of information might have been some, turtle intervention. And, honestly, in retrospect, it might be so, right? Because, like, if you think about it, like, Bill serves as an obstacle until he doesn't anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
And then he actually plays an important role in the thing, in the stopping of what's his name, the bad guy,
Frank.
So So it's interesting. I mean, I think it's somewhat ambiguous whether, what elements are the past trying to stop him versus what elements are maybe not just straightforwardly obstacles. I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I want to have a long conversation about Bill and his role in this when we get there.
Yeah,
But I think you're right. It does become much more complicated than perhaps we would have figured. Like our understanding of how the obdurate past operates is via like freak accidents and annoyances. Like, I mean, I think the Jake getting horribly sick the day of like makes sense with what we've been told. The Bill Turcotte showing up complicates things a little bit more.
it complicates things in a way that is once again it's unclear whether that was ultimately an obstacle or you know I don't know. I'm open minded to the idea that maybe there are things that are going to pop up that might seem like obstacles but are actually helping because you never quite know how something is going to play out.
Sure.
You know, and we already sort of know that there is supernatural help on his side as well as supernatural forces against him because he did get advice from the two magical children. So
Yeah. I think that's a totally fair read to come out of that chapter with of the next time some guy shows up and magically tells him everything he needs to know. It's a fair conclusion to have that. Um, oh, it's more of the same.
mhm.
And perhaps that's why King so early in this conversation, like l- lampshades the
Yeah.
idea that this guy has an agenda that I Jake Epping didn't consider
Yeah,
at the
because
time.
otherwise it might feel like, oh, he's just getting all this free help from everyone. This is going to be
Yeah,
easy. And then you
yeah,
realize it's not quite that simple. Yeah.
yeah. So Jake leaves the bar, starts expanding his notes, and time moves on as he starts to get used to 1958. I love the bit where he's enjoying his morning milk just as much as he did the root beer, the fullness of it. He's making notes about Derry and Frank Dunning, and also what he's doing. The book doesn't talk about this very often, but it does at least gesture towards the fact that he has begun reading Al's notes about Lee Harvey Oswald. Like we know that Al took this extensive notebook about Lee Harvey Oswald and everything he found out about him and where he was going to be at what time and all these things. And Jake has begun digesting that information.
Yeah. Um, I think that's cool. Yeah.
I think it's just like in my mind that is just like reminding the reader that we've still got that to get to. Like we're so focused on the right now, on Derry, on the Dunnings, that like just a friendly reminder of this book is called 11/22/63. We're gonna get towards that eventually.
Yeah. It's not totally out of his mind, but also doesn't seem to be a top priority for him right now, for
Yeah.
sure.
Finally, as the chapter comes to a close on October 5th, Jake observes Frank do something out of his routine. He goes out in the rain to his parents' grave and leaves flowers, and the chapter ends with, I had what I wanted. And I'm curious what your reaction to this moment was, Matt.
I didn't. I don't know if I knew quite what to make of it. It was like what he made a gesture that suggested that he had made some kind of resolution, which made Jake realize like, okay, he's probably going to go through with this thing, as expected,
Yeah.
and so I should be prepared for that. Um, and it's like it's sort of subjective in Jake's own head, like what is the meaning of that gesture? Sometimes maybe a man just wants to leave flowers on his parents' grave, but it's
Yeah.
like Jake decided that that's what that meant, and I think the text basically shows that he was correct. So,
Yeah.
um,
I think so. This is, yes, I agree with you. I do think this is where I wonder if this is King was trying to communicate something and failed to, or something else. Because, and I guess this is technically spoilers, but I don't think it is because I think the book wants you to know this in this moment. Essentially, what's happening here, Matt, is Jake is planning for the next trip around. He knows he's going to have to come back to save JFK.
okay.
He's going to have to come to Derry and deal with Frank again. and he has found a point in Frank's upcoming history where he is alone in a secluded area, and is the perfect place if you're going to kill this guy to do it. And I think that's what King wanted to communicate in this very moment. But I agree with you; it's not clear. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I finished this chapter, saw this, and was like trying in my head to work through the exact same thing you were working through, knowing everything that's going to happen after this moment, of just being like, what is he saying? Is he saying like he got enough information to, like, why is him leaving flowers at his parents' grave like, yes, I have to kill him now? Like, I that just didn't make sense to me. And I do wonder if I'm mixed between King wants you to be uncertain of what we're saying in that moment, and he's actually just trying to tell you that this is where he's going to kill Frank the next time.
Yeah, that certainly
So
did
I
not
might have
occur
just
to me.
spoiled something. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that didn't occur to me, and I think the thing that's most perplexing about that is like if Jake had just done a better job this time around, then there would have been. No, that's not true. I was going to say there would have been no need to go back, but that's absolutely not true. He would have had to go
No,
back
he
anyway.
no matter what, if
Um,
he's going to take out Lee Harvey Oswald and wants this change that he's committing right now to stay permanent, he knew he was going to have to come kill him again.
yeah, although I don't think you spoiled me on this, but I did just kind of think through the implication that on his next run through, he will have to kill this guy, successfully get away with it, and then kill time for 5 years with this murder hanging over him the whole time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he's just going to have to deal with that as yet another obstacle, right? So
Yeah.
I like, okay, that, see, now this makes more sense to me, honestly, as a story element, because it's like, not only does he have to wait it out for 5 years, but he has to wait it out with, like, maybe the cops are after him for this thing that he had to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's all coming together. It's all coming
Yeah,
together.
and apologies if you're a new reader out there that just got spoiled on this is where I'm going to kill Frank Epping. And I'm not even saying this is where he ends up actually killing Frank Epping. I'm just saying that I am 99% sure that the thing we're wanting to communicate in this moment is I found the perfect place to commit this crime when I'm going to have to commit it next time.
Yeah,
And
right.
I do think it's a little weird that like my mind wants to go, oh, he's doing this uncertainty on purpose. He wants you to leave this chapter not sure what I had, what I wanted meant. But if that's true, I think he holds that uncertainty for too long. Like, that should be resolved in the next chapter, and it's not. So I'm forced to conclude that no, he just wanted to communicate the thing I told you he's communicating, and it just didn't work for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, it left my mind immediately. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're right.
Anyway, all right. Chapter 8. Chapter 8 begins with Jake making sure he's seen investigating all the properties around Derry. He's, we joked about him and his conspicuous vehicle, but he is doing a good job of like he's not completely unaware that people are able to observe him, and so he's visiting every property that's for sale. He goes out to the Kitchener Iron Works. He says, I wanted to get the locals accustomed to the sight of my sporty red sunliner. So, like, I mean, we give Jake a hard time sometimes, but I think he's doing pretty good, right?
Yeah, I mean, later realized that this is actually really smart, because it would be suspicious if a guy came to town in a drab car, seems to be hiding his motives and movements. You only ever see him following Frank around,
Mm-hmm.
whereas this guy, he comes to town in a loud car. He announces to every bartender in town that he's scouting real estate locations. He's everywhere. And so maybe if sometimes he's seen around Frank, well, he's seen everywhere. So what does that mean? Who cares? And so everyone thinks they know everything about him, and thus they don't think to ask any more questions. They stop wondering about him. It ends up being actually a good strategy, I think, overall.
Yeah. I mean, it works well, with the exception of he's even kind of aware that no suspenders, as he calls him before he learns Bill's name, he's even kind of aware that he's there, and he keeps bumping into him, and he kind of brushes it off as coincidence, but of course it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't want to say Jake's incompetent. No, he's doing a pretty good job here.
Yeah.
King talks a lot about Derry in these chapters, but this next bit is probably my favorite, and I'm not going to read it all because it's very, very long, but I just want to read some of this because I think it's really, really good. Certain empty houses that seem to stare like the faces of people suffering from terrible mental illness. An empty barn on the outskirts of town, the hayloft door swinging slowly open and closed on rusty hinges, first disclosing darkness, then hiding it, then disclosing it again. A splintered fence on Cosset Street, just a block away from the house where Mrs. Dunning and her children lived. To me, that fence looked as if something, or someone, had been hurled through it and into the barrens below. An empty playground with the roundy round slowly spinning, even though there was no kids to push it and no appreciable wind to turn it. It screamed on its hidden bearings as it moved. Just once again, just every time he describes a place like this, I think King is like operating almost on like his best level.
Yeah. It's a haunted nightmare town. I love it.
Yeah. I also want to point out when I copy and pasted this whole sequence into to our script, Grammarly was nice enough to tell me all the ways in which they felt that this wasn't well written. So
Delightful.
Thanks, Grammarly.
Yeah, that's great.
They want me to pay a premium to see why, though.
Well, I'm curious now.
Yeah. So yeah, I just love this whole thing. Like, I think he hears like a man kill a dog at some point, and is just like, this place sucks.
Yeah.
I hate this place.
This is traumatizing him just being here.
Mm-hmm. Jake also comes in contact with Pennywise as well, Matt. Well, sort of, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's at the Kitchener Ironworks, and he hears a voice from inside the smokestack, and it's speaking to him. It says, it doesn't say we all float down here, but it uses the word float.
Yes.
And he what Jake says is, it was Derry in there. I love it. I love it so much.
Me too. Yeah, I felt I got a big grin on my face when he says float.
Yeah.
And I also just like this as a representation of what sort of a normal grown-up experience is when they encounter this supernatural. And this is very much like off of Pennywise's main cycle, so we're not getting like the full clown experience, obviously, but like,
yeah,
even I guess it's kind of settled something in my mind, whereas like even when Pennywise is not in one of his active phases, he's still having this pervasive influence, and he can still kind of whisper to people like this in moments like this.
He's not active, but there is kind of a passive rot that he is that it is at the center of.
Yeah.
And is influencing everything. Yeah. Yep. I love it. So as October rolls on, Jake continues to look for the most optimal place to hide out and wait for the approach of Halloween. He thinks the rec center might work, but ends up finding the perfect place, an empty home, catty corner to the Dunning's house. I really love this part as we get closer and closer to it. Jake kind of pauses here and talks to us about the rehearsal of a student play and comparing it, building a metaphor around it to this Dunning event that's coming up. How, you start out, you're rehearsing the first couple times, it's really casual. Everyone's pretty loose. If you flub a few lines, it's fine. If you're a little bit late, it's fine. And as you move closer and closer to opening night, that everything starts to tense. Everyone gets a little bit more nervous. Everyone's a little bit more angry. If you flub a line, someone's pissed off at you. If you show up late, you're wasting precious time. And just this great picture of how, as we get closer and closer to Halloween night, that everything's tightening and tensing, and then literally on the day we have diarrhea. It's just, I don't know. I just, the way he describes this, it's kind of like this one-off section in the middle of this lead up to the event, and I just thought it was very effective. Yeah,
me too. I love the metaphor of the play, or the comparison to the play. I've never really been in an important big play like this. So, but I nonetheless, like, I felt like it was so well described that I still related to it very strongly.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed that.
So Jake wakes up the day of the big show, ready to blow it out of both ends. I love how he kicks the hateful little yellow chair on his way to the bathroom. This is like what the one piece of furniture in his room, and he just hates it. He just
Yeah.
hates it so much. And his hatred of this stupid little yellow chair is, I think, supposed to represent this overall hatred of Derry. And just like details like that is, I think, what makes it work. Like we didn't have to have I kicked that hateful little yellow chair on my way to the bathroom, but we add it, and it just shows he's so tired of this place at this
Yeah.
point.
His frustration, yeah, it humanizes him.
Mhm.
But yeah, fuck that chair, man. Yeah.
To deal with his sickness, Jake heads to our old friend Norbert Keene to get some medicine. And I've already done this, but let me remind you all again that when I said Keene sucked a big one, there were some people in our audience that said, "You're being too mean to him." And he
Uh-huh.
wasn't awful to poor Eddie. He was just trying to help poor Eddie. Well, now what, huh? Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Keen is I mean, I think that's the thing is he is a weasel. He's a weasel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard to pin him down on when he's being a shit. But I think, because this is an adult engaging with him, um, it's he is able to pin him down, and in fact, it's actually quite pleasurable watching Jake trash Keen to his face. Although maybe it
It is.
costs him a little bit.
Yeah, Keen is a little shit. He's taking pleasure in Jake's misfortune, and Jake is tired of this place and this guy, and he just, "You're quite the bastard, aren't you? The perfect goddamn Derry citizen."
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, it's so good. So Jake gets his medicine, needs to use the bathroom, is denied by Norbert Keene, and has to sprint across the street to a bar. That's where he notices that Bill Turcotte is following him, and this time he knows it for sure. He gets his name, but there's not much he can do with this information, and so all he does is kind of take his medicine, start to get better, and then we're it's showtime. It's opening night, so. He's got his sickness under control. He heads to the house to wait for 8 p.m. and wait for Frank Dunning to show up. There's one question I have for you, Matt. Why did he have to wait until the moment to do this?
Yeah, I was thinking about this too, and I mean, I think I guess the best answer is caution. Like he wants to get the guy alone. If he stops by the rooming house that he's at, it's like there's going to be a ton of people there. He doesn't know. Um, he doesn't know when he's going to be able to get this guy alone and get the drop
Yeah,
on him. But he does know for sure one place the guy's going to be and exactly what time the guy's going to be there,
yeah.
and basically how he's going to get there. So he just puts himself in the right position to take advantage of it. I will say, like they're just, again, this is my like munchkin-y sort of like sci-fi brain. I'm just like, get a rifle and just shoot him from a rooftop or something. Like there's so many better, like shoot, take a note from Lee Harvey Oswald. Like there's so many better ways to kill somebody than letting it down to the wire like this. And I think what we're sort of meant to see from all this is like, this is not the way to go about this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like you know what a terrible idea would be to literally just like wait in Dallas by the location of the motorcade and be prepared to stop Oswald just as the assassination is about to happen, because you'll definitely fail. Like the universe will throw up all kinds of obstacles. You've got to start. You've got to preempt things. You've got to get in the way as soon as you possibly can. And because he doesn't do that, that's why he basically fails. I mean, he doesn't fail, but he half fails. So
Yeah, there's just not enough time to overcome all the obstacles that are thrown in his way. I do think part of this is his his uncertainty over Frank Dunning still. He's
uh-huh.
like, can I really kill this guy if I'm not 100% sure he's doing it? And I joked about pre-crime, but it is this weird thing of like, you're going to kill a person for a thing they haven't done yet, whereas, if you run in and kill them as they're doing it or right before they do it, well, that's morally a lot more clear in your head, right? Like
Uh-huh.
he was like if the past is becoming the present, he was actively in the now about to kill people, and I can feel a little bit better about doing this. So I think
Yeah.
that's all mixed in there. I do think it's interesting that, unless I just missed it, I don't think Jake ever like takes that train of thought that we just had into, I'm gonna wait till Halloween night and do this then. I don't think he ever like explicitly says that, but I think it's there in the conversations he's had in his head about the uncertainty of killing a person and things like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's all part of this like precautionary principle that seems to
Yeah.
be driving him.
Mm-hmm. So he's sitting there in the house, waiting, and then at this time, that's when our friend Bill Turcotte shows up, knife in hand, to stop him. The past is obdurate, of course, and it's sent a man to stop him. But why has he been following him? And that's when we get the great moment that we've already talked about. He's mine, Amberson. That son of a bitch killed my little sister. And if anyone puts a bullet in him or a blade, it's gonna be me. I just like, what a wonderful moment. Like everything's been
Uh-huh.
building to this, and it's like King knows he's got you, and he's just gonna land this twist on you that it's gonna make you go, wait,
Yeah.
what?
I'm sure I stopped whatever I was doing and just made a face of like bafflement and like just a gaping fish face basically. No,
Yeah.
it's the most delightful possible angle to take on this because it's so much more infuriating than if it was simply like, it's one of Frank's friends who's on to you and he's going to stop you so that
Yeah.
Frank can go on with what he was going to do.
Is that what you figured it was before this moment?
Um, yes, yes. The only question I had about that was like, well, then Frank must also know that this guy's after him, and
Mm-hmm.
so and,
Mm-hmm.
and so the whole jig is up if Frank knows that this guy's after him, because then that would just be, but that's not the case. So
Yeah. I did also think, like, there's so many opportunities to do interesting stuff with this because, we've been established that Derry is the like he talked to the kids, right? And he was specifically warned away from approaching children. And it's like, oh well, maybe Bill noticed him talk to Bev and Richie and is suspicious about it. And like you
mm,
could have taken this to much more complicated places, but this is I don't think this is a thing that anyone ever would have guessed. is that he also wants to kill him. And it does, like, I gestured towards this earlier, but it raised the question in my mind of like, okay, so where was this guy on October 31st? Because if the past has sent, like, if truly this is a representation of the obdurate past trying to resist change, well, hasn't it already changed things just by doing that? If Bill is here today in this house to stop Jake and having a heart attack, isn't that already the past changing in some ways?
mhm.
Like obviously there was not, like, at least in Harry's story, we learned nothing about there being another man who died of a heart attack in this room the first time around.
Right.
That's going to happen now. So now we have we have a character who did not die in the first time and has died now. Same, I mean, same with Frank as well, right? Frank didn't die. Frank was arrested and died in prison years later. So it's just a lot of questions spring from this twist that are really, really fun questions.
Yeah, right. Like once you start interfering, the past will do things that um may be just as hard to fix as the thing you were trying to change. So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't
yeah.
know. It's an interesting idea. I like that.
Yeah, but this is where it gets really interesting too, Matt, because as Bill is telling Jake the story of why he hates Frank so much, that Frank's first wife and kid that left him, turns out they didn't leave him, they were murdered
Uh-huh.
by Frank, um, and his Frank's first wife is Bill's sister, so he's been like biding his time and wanting his revenge on him. But then we get the heart attack moment where we're told specifically, oh, I never get sick, I've never been sick, and now suddenly he's getting sick, now suddenly he's have a heart attack, and you start to wonder, okay, is this the obdurate past working again? Does it see, and I'm personifying the past as it here, that Bill is going to work toward changing this event too. That one way or another, like that Frank is not supposed to die here in this moment, and Bill is here now, and he's working towards changing the past. And so now he's have like in just the way that Jake got massive diarrhea, Bill is getting a heart attack, right? Um, so if that's the case, then Jake changing things can have obdurate consequences for other people too, right? Like non-time travelers. Like Bill was not setting out to change the past, right? He didn't say, today I'm going to change the past. He doesn't know. He's a person living in the present. But if the heart attack that he's suffering from here is as a result of the past resisting change, then Jake fucking around doing this stuff cannot just have consequences for him. It can have consequences for everyone around him and the people he surrounds himself with, intentionally or otherwise. And that is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like he's radioactive. At the more things he changes, the more sort of collateral damage there might be.
Yeah.
That's very interesting to consider.
But then there's the other part of it that you talked about was, well, maybe this isn't the obdurate past. Maybe Bill is sent here specifically to help get over the hump.
Yeah.
I will say, like, probably the reason poor Turcotte dies is because Bill prevents Jake from getting there early enough, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, that's true, and this is all kind of subjective and down to, who knows, but like I feel like there's a chance that Frank just kills Jake if Bill isn't there to sort of distract him and kind of throw one more person into the mix, because
That's fair. Yeah.
I feel like Jake was not prepared for him to have a sledgehammer and did not think through the dynamics of like, I've never fired a gun before, and this is a large man in close quarters with a sledgehammer. You're not actually guaranteed to win that fight. That said, I mean, you could totally be right, and it could absolutely just simply be Bill is an obstacle, and I'm being optimistic in thinking that he's a turtle agent. I mean, one thing that makes me feel that this is a little bit turtle coded, though, is simply the fact that Bill was like this coward his whole life, like in a very tragic way. Like he correctly believed that his sister and nephew had been murdered, and was totally broken up about it. But like, because of being, stepped on by Derry, he did nothing about it, and he just like obsessed over Frank, like really quite unhealthily obsessed over this guy for years and years and years. And now he gets to die heroically saving this family from the fate that befell his sister. And yes, it's sad that he dies, but it's like, this is actually kind of an incredible redemption. Because like, imagine what happened to him in the main line, where like he wakes up, November 1st, took me a second, November 1st, and learns that Frank murdered his whole family again, and that Bill, did nothing at all to stop that in all the years that he could have done something. He would probably be even more miserable than he already was. So like, you could view this as a very like, Ka rich, redemption story for this character. I don't know.
Yes. That's a fun line of thinking. Because it is certainly conspicuous that he's been basically following Jake around for 6 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And today is the day he chooses to confront him.
Yeah.
It just so happens to be the day. Like Bill doesn't know this is the day, right? To
Right.
Bill, this is just another day. And here Jake's like posting up, waiting for some reason.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that feels like it's it's a push by an outside influence. Because yeah, to your point, like, and Jake directly attacks him on this later, his cowardice, that he's had this goal. It's like, this is not Inigo Montoya who's been looking for the fingered man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's been right there in the town the whole time. He can just walk across the street anytime he wants and take him out, but he's not done it. And suddenly he gets agency and action in this final moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be, but again, that could just be being pushed by the obdurate past towards something that he never would have done otherwise.
Yeah, I guess, we may never know, right? But like, one thing I am curious to see is whether he has any role whatsoever in the next time around, the next loop.
Yeah, no, the good point. Will we see him again in Derry in the next couple chapters? Good question. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
So we also get the story here about poor Chaz being another victim of Derry's crusade against anyone that is so ever so slightly different. He was being bullied by Frank Dunning and his pals for being Jewish, and but also probably just for being not them.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, we learn, helped him out by summoning a football team to go beat those guys up. And I didn't really have anything to say about this other than I thought we'd at least need to mention it, because it's like, this is why Chaz hates. This is not one of the pro Frank Dunning people, is because Chaz has hated this guy since this moment. Man, there's a lot of bullies beating the shit out of people's stories in Derry, huh?
Yeah, right. I was even wondering, like, is this, more sort of clown instigated mischief? I don't know. We also, I always wonder, it's like, was this 27 years ago by any chance? I don't have I don't actually have the dates of or like the ages of any of these characters in my mind. But anyway,
that's a good question. I think they said they're all the same age and in their 30s, so
yeah.
It could. I didn't actually put that math together. But
yeah,
that could be fun. Yeah,
it feels like it could very well be.
I mean, ultimately, like, it made everything clear that it is Derry and Derry is it, right? That they're just inextricably linked, and so yes, basically every bad thing that happened is both because of and in service to and this presence that lives there.
Yeah.
So it's all clown mischief, basically.
Yeah. And I was thinking about Bill as a character, because like, he is this tragic character, and more tragic in some ways than a lot of these Derry characters, where they're just garbage. And it's like, he's not great, but like, he kind of feels like a person with a good heart who had the bad luck of living his whole life in Derry.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of seems to have turned him sick and twisted. And like I said a second ago, like, he's clearly unhealthily obsessed with the guy who killed his sister, but won't do anything about it. And so, but like, he's got that seed of something good inside him. And I guess that made it seem more tragic to me.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. I did love the part where Jake basically comes clean to him and tells him that, hey, I'm here to stop Frank Dunning because he's about to do it again. He's going to kill his entire family. We could stop him. And Bill's response is, okay.
Yeah.
We'll let him do it.
Right. Yeah. He'll get caught this time. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I love, and it says what you just said there. What he said next could have only come from a man who was mentally ill or who had lived too long in Derry, or both. Yeah. So basically, we're in this race against time. This is incredibly tense scene. I think it worked really well that Jake keeps checking his watch, is getting closer and closer to 8:00, and Bill is still holding him here. I do like the detail that part of the way Bill holds him here is just via story, and just this idea that like a good story is transfixing you, and Jake probably could have, like, when Bill's guard was down, knocked the gun away from him and gotten out of there, but he just couldn't help himself with just the power of a good story. I don't know. What was your thought on that?
Well, I enjoyed it, and then when I think about it in retrospect, I'm like, well, maybe he needed to hear this. Like, maybe this is an important story that will have implications for choices he makes in the future, actually. So
Sure.
It wasn't merely him being hypnotized. It was actually like the magic of the story got through to him on that level.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I also just think it's the idea is funny that like this English teacher, who obviously loves stories, who is much like Stephen King in many ways, I think is like, okay, well, this is incredibly urgent, but I can't leave because a man is telling a story right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like it. So with only minutes to go, Jake tries another tactic. He goes on the verbal offensive. He calls Bill a coward and a failure. The result sends Bill's heart attack into the danger zone, and Jake is able to knock the gun out of his hand, or the bayonet rather. And then he just like leaves him to die. Like there's this moment where Bill is like, "Please call a hospital," and Jake's just like, "Nah."
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta break a few eggs, I guess.
Just how quickly we've gone from I'm not sure I want to kill this person because I'm not 100% sure he's done this bad thing that I'm pretty sure he's done, to, well, this guy's got to die. He got in my way.
Yeah, right. I mean, I feel like in this case, I don't know, if a dude pulls a bayonet on me, I feel like the social contract does not obligate me very much toward him anymore.
I think that's fair. I also think if there was a man on the floor begging you to call an ambulance for him, that would be a more difficult choice than you're
Ye-
you're holding it out to be.
Sure. No, I think the reality is, if things had gone according to plan, then maybe Jake, once he saves the family, he says, by the way, the cops are going to be here soon anyway because of this guy I just shot. There's a guy having a heart attack out behind your house. Bye. Right. Like I think that would be the elegant way to handle all that.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. So he heads to the house. He trips over the sandbox and loses his gun. That damn obdurate sandbox, just fucking everything up.
Yep. I hate
And then we get
sandboxes.
this line, one of my favorite lines of the week. Even if it kills me, I thought. Even if it kills me and Oswald goes through with it and millions die, even then, because this is now. This is them. Ugh, that's
Yeah.
so good.
This is now. I mean, yeah, I this really hit me hard. Like, okay, we've been building toward this. A lot of the other stuff we talked about last week, I think, felt like it clicked into place here because,
Yeah.
I mean, this was the past for Jake a few weeks ago when he
Mhm.
arrived here. This was the past. It had all this novelty. Now he lives here. Now this is now. He doesn't say it, but that kind of implies that 2011 is the future to him now, not the present, right? So
Yeah.
and I'm not even surprised to see this. I guess it's like it feels natural that you live in this era long enough. It's just like this is my life.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great.
Ah, I agree. I love it. So he gets into the house just as Frank Denning shows up, and I love the line, "That's Derry itself coming up the walk." I love that so much. Were you at all surprised, Matt, that it is actually just Frank here, and everything basically plays out exactly the way we thought it would, at least until Jake starts to interrupt it? I mean, I guess we shouldn't have been expecting a twist like this, but there was just a small part of me that was like, "Oh, okay, so it's just going to go exactly the way Harry wrote it, only some subtle changes, and like he misremembered the dialogue slightly a bit." What was your reaction to that?
I guess I didn't expect a twist. I mean, I think we did get a little twist in that specifically it's a sledgehammer, which did successfully create like a jolt of fear for me as the reader, because I realized like it's a very different thing. Like I said a second ago, for a large man in close quarters with the sledgehammer, he has such a greater range and a greater ability to do damage with a single blow. So if I just had like a little police special versus a guy with a sledgehammer in a room, you don't even know. Like, you can put a couple bullets in the guy and he'll still kill you with the sledgehammer while you're getting off your third shot, right? So
Sure.
it made it seem like, oh god, this is even worse than I thought, right? That was where my head went.
Sure.
Actually,
Yeah, no, I think that's true. That oh shit, like I think we were all imagining just like a regular hammer,
yeah.
not a huge ass sledgehammer. I guess what I'll say is like I have this very distinct memory of the first time I read this book of, we kind of already talked about the JFK conspiracies, and was it really Lee Harvey Oswald, or did he act alone? And we talked about, like, is this book going to play into those conspiracy theories? Like, is part of the plot of the book going to be like he goes back in time to investigate and try to stop Lee Harvey Oswald, and like learns that this conspiracy theory was correct, and oh, that changes everything, and whether the book is going to be that or not? And that's still kind of an unanswered question, but the possibility is there. And then, so like, if this Derry stuff is a dry run for that, then the idea of, oh, it wasn't actually Frank Dunning that did this, or rather that like it did, like when Bill Turcotte is introduced in that moment, like I do remember my head, like one of the things I thought about was like, oh, he was always going to be here on Halloween night, and it was his struggle with Frank that like set this whole thing off, actually. And maybe that's going to be the surprise reveal. And of course, none of that happens. I just remember having those memories, and I was just curious if any of that crossed your mind.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. I mean, so not what you just said, but one thing that did cross my mind is like, well, maybe Frank, Bill rather, maybe Bill is always sitting outside the house for, in the previous timeline,
Yeah.
it's because he just gets to be in his bonnet, and he's like, I'm gonna go watch over that family because of what happened to my family, and then he's still unable to stop Frank. Like maybe right, we can say maybe.
Yeah.
We have no idea really. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I do, I don't know, it wasn't a direction that I went, but I also agree, like you could, the story I think leaves open the possibility of like, yeah, I mean, Jake is justifiably uncertain that the details of this story are right, because this was like an essay written by a man many, many years later, recalling the most horrible event of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps he made things up, like not even like maliciously, because he doesn't know that this is going to be a manual used by a time traveler. He's just writing a story, basically.
Yeah.
So who knows what could have been different, right? Yeah. So I feel you just in that general regard.
Yeah, and it's fun to think, the other side of this coin is perhaps that not happening here is signaling towards us that the twists and turns of the way the rest of this book is going to play out are going to be more the hurdles that were not considered, and not it wasn't actually Lee Harvey Oswald type
Right.
of twists.
Yeah, right. That makes sense. One thing I wanted to hit hard at this moment is how powerful and how unique the audiobook is in this section. First
Do you
of
know
all, just
who's the guy that does it?
I don't off the top of my head, but I can look that up real quick. It's not a name that I recognize. Sorry, I mean, it's not a voice that I recognize. It's I think it's Craig Wasson.
Yeah,
Is the name that's popping up here, and it's not one that I've heard anywhere else either. Like, I normally recognize audiobook readers, but like, he does a great job, and he does a great job because he's doing the thing where it's not man reading audiobook to you, it's he is being the character of Jake, telling you the story. And what that means here is when the sledgehammer hits Tugga in the face, the audiobook reader's voice just breaks, and it's like he's sobbing, almost like you can still understand what the words are that he's saying. He's not really disrupting the reading, but it's like his voice totally is destroyed in that specific way of like, this is a performance. This is a man who is utterly heartbroken and shocked by what he's just seen, and he's telling you this story about this, probably the worst thing he ever saw with his own eyes, right? And it's it's the furthest thing in the world from just like your typical audiobook experience where I'm reading you a Stephen King novel. The sledgehammer smashed the boy's face, and it was so dreadful. No, it's like he's performing it, and it was so impactful. And I don't know, anybody who's considering the audiobook, like I can give a strong pitch for the audiobook right there.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. I mean, all that I experienced all that in written form, I guess. Like, obviously, I
Mhm.
didn't hear someone break, but I think it's a very impactful sequence and moment. Like this, the desperation here, the chaos, the idea that like he shoots this guy several times and he just keeps coming. And it feels like things are positioning themselves to stop him from being able to stop this, right? It just and it is the chaos and heartbreak of that, when he fails to save one of the kids' lives. So a very, very effective action sequence, I think.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's an action sequence, but it's sort of one of those classic Stephen King horror action sequences where it's like
Yeah.
you don't feel, it's not exciting. I mean, it is exciting. Let's not kid ourselves. It is exciting, but it's got this tinge of dread and
Hmm.
awfulness to it too.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. So before he leaves, Jake goes down to the dying Bill and tells him he's a hero. Hey, you're a hero, buddy.
yeah.
Also, I was never here. Don't tell anyone I was here, please.
Uh-huh. Right.
And yeah, we've already talked about this, but once again, like this guy didn't die here the first time. So what are the consequences of that going to be? I do think it's interesting that Jake doesn't, and he's a little rushed for time, but he doesn't really even think about that yet.
Uh-huh.
How will this change things too? I just saved these people's lives, but someone else died. That didn't happen last time either. And
Right.
how is that going to change things?
Yeah. I guess where my head was at here, not that I was explicitly thinking about this, but I guess I'm like, he's going to find out as soon as he gets back to the future.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying he wouldn't have wondered about that, or maybe he shouldn't have wondered about that. It's just like, I guess the reader, jealously just wanting to know the information. I'm like, well, we'll just know the answer to that soon. So
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Then he apologizes to Mrs. Dunning, saying he'll do better next time, which has got to be just a very confusing thing to be told.
yeah.
um,
Uh-huh.
he does see little Harry on his way out, and I really like this line. Here was a boy who had just experienced something that would no doubt traumatize him, but he was also a boy who would never grow up to become Hop-Toad Harry or to write a theme that would make me cry. I jokingly wanted to have a take here that this whole thing has very little to do with Harry himself and
Uh-huh.
more to do with the famously cry resistant Jake
Uh-huh.
being made uncomfortable by something so emotional that made him cry. And this is all about taking away that trauma and less about saving someone else of their experience.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I don't think any of that's really true. But it did occur to me as I was reading this.
I don't think you're off base. I mean, I keep thinking about what felt like a very grounding moment for the story was Jake trying to intervene on behalf of Harry, and Harry being like, "Nah, they're just kids. Leave them alone. They don't mean anything by it."
Mm-hmm.
And translation: I have accepted what happened to me. I have accepted my lot in life. And Jake being like, "Well, I haven't." So, isn't there someone you forgot to ask? Me, Jake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I think that's there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Jake's flight from Derry is pretty uneventful overall. He makes his way back to Lisbon Falls by midnight. I do love the idea that like the various things that George Amberson left in both Derry and Lisbon Falls, and like if you're trying to piece together the story of what the hell happened this night, just all these things that aren't going to make any sense. Like they're going to be canvassing the area and go to this empty house and find a bag full of payday bars
Uh-huh.
and some blood in this garage, and they're gonna be like, what the what
Uh-huh.
what does this mean?
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that as well. I almost wish we got that moment of just
Mm-hmm.
bafflement, but no.
Yeah. So Jake gets back to the drying shed and begins to search for his portal home. For a brief moment, he can't find it and thinks that it might be gone. And then we get this. And did I feel disappointment? Terror? Outright panic? None of those, actually. What I felt was a sneaking sensation of relief. What I thought was, I could live here, and quite easily, happily even. Was that true? Yes. Yes. Wow.
Yeah, great stuff.
Wow. Like that's monumental, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's so funny because it turns out he just like stopped 10 steps short of where he needed to be.
Uh-huh.
So he was just like misremembering. And then we get the key moment where he hears Al call down to him and almost ignores it. Almost says,
Yeah.
"No, I didn't hear that." He starts planning what his life will look like, where he'll go, how he'll operate. He's 6 weeks in the most miserable town in America, according to Jake, and he's ready. He's ready to stay here. He's ready to live in this place in this time. He's ready for it already.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great moment because I think it's just preparing us for the idea that, hey, that's basically what he's going to be in for the rest of
Yeah.
the story.
Yeah, I because I'm rereading The Dark Tower, I was thinking a lot about, when the three are first drawn into Midworld, and this kind of mix of terror, but this addiction to this journey and this life and this new world that they've been brought to. Eddie especially, and I just like I saw that parallel there. It was just like how addicting and evocative the idea of getting to live in essentially what is a new world for you can be, despite the fact that it's clearly dangerous for you to
I like that
to
idea.
nail those Dark Tower comparisons.
No, that's fantastic. I would not have thought of that, but that's great.
All right, but that's where we end. Jake steps back into 2011, and we will find out the results of his quest to save the Dunnings next week.
Awesome. Yeah.
So that's it. Yeah. Next week, we're going to begin section 3 of the novel. We'll be reading 3 chapters, chapters 9, 10, and 11. It's going to be another short one. I think these are only 50 some pages. So another little short section. But it's going to be a good one, Matt. It's going to be good. We
I'm
maybe
excited.
will start the quest of saving JFK. Maybe.
I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it. Let's not get too hasty.
All right, yeah, we're only like a third of the way through the book, less, so we can't get on to that stuff yet.
No.
All right, Matt, it's discussion question time. What was last week's question?
So we talked about the idea of basically, King or some other author returning to their old stomping grounds. And we left that a little open-ended in terms of what that meant, but basically
Sure.
like revisiting ideas, settings, characters, whatever that they had previously explored. People actually really got into this one. I guess maybe this shouldn't have surprised me, because there's a reason why creators do go back to their old stuff. It's because people love it. So anyway, without further ado, No Knowledge 84 says, basically, I'm sort of paraphrasing this a little bit. They're pointing out there some things that echo past books in this very book that we're reading now. They say, while the location echoes past King books, I believe there are narrative echoes that make the entirety of Derry resonate with a constant reader. The first was when Jack is asking for directions. It felt eerily similar to when Roland was asking for directions in Tull. And then he quotes first 11/22/63. No response to this unless one of the men dropping his cigarette butt onto the sidewalk and then putting it out with the snot loogie the size of a small mussel could be termed an answer. Nevertheless, I pushed on. And then from the Gunslinger, long days and pleasant nights, the Gunslinger offered conversationally. No answer. You fellas live in town? No answer, unless the scorpion's tail gave one. It seemed to nod. And then they go on to discuss alcoholic man beating his family to death with a mallet in a rage, in a place fueled by bad vibes, shares echoes with The Shining, and he says what clinched it for me is, in that circumstance, was how upset he was by Jake trespassing. It felt similar to how Jack justified his anger with Danny for trespassing into the room, into room 217. And then I like this quote. They say, my favorite connection with Balthasar's commentary on building card castles. You see this, Jimmy? For every mother who ever cursed God for her child dead in the road, for every father who ever cursed the man who sent him away from the factory with no job, for every child who was ever born in pain and asked why, this is the answer. Our lives are like these things I build. Sometimes they fall down for a reason, sometimes they fall down for no reason at all. It's up to men to build things, Paisan. It's up to God to blow them down. And this is, of course, drawing of the three. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then Jack has similar thoughts of towers of cards, but feels that he should take on the role of God and choose the moment of death, of life and death for the Dunning family. Considering the outcome, Balthazar may be right that only God should be messing with time. That's great. I mean, this is not like what I had in mind when I thought about the connections, but I loved like this connection of ideas and themes, which is, I mean, this is like what we love to talk about all the time, right?
Yeah, no, I loved every bit of this, and a lot of this stuff is almost certainly unintentional. Like I think the first example of the way uh, the response to both Jake and Roland's question is similar is almost certainly like it's the same guy writing it. He has the same thought processes, but that doesn't matter, right? That's immaterial. Like
Yeah.
it still echoes in fun ways. So no, this is really cool. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, the the longer we do this, the more I think that a lot of the cool stuff we discover is unintentional, and it's just like
Yeah,
you said, it's like it's a pattern in the creator that emerges that doesn't make it. I mean, if anything, that makes it kind of more fun to ferret out and think about.
totally agree. Next, we have Talks You That, who says, "This was a tough one. I sat and thought about it for far too long. Then I realized why it was so hard for me. It's because I don't like it. Don't stone me yet. Let me explain. In my mind, if it's very long, it just becomes the next chapter or episode and not a revisit. Also, if it's super short, then it's just a fun little Easter egg and not a revisit. Both of these are fun and enjoyable, and I love both. However, as much as my heart smiled for an instant when we see Richie and Bev, it left me the same amount of sad we moved on and never see them again. It was just long enough to make me feel like I make me feel like we were doing something with them, but not long enough to actually do anything. And then I can't pay attention to the story because I spend the rest of the day with the losers in my head. I don't know. Can I both love and dislike something at the same time? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
And I totally get that. I totally get that feeling of it's not it's too important to just be a fun Easter egg, like the Tracker Brothers, for example. But it's not important enough to actually be like an ongoing element of the story, and how that can be distracting. Yeah, I mean, like, let's be honest. I would say the majority of the times that authors and creators do this, I don't like it because it feels so pandery.
yeah.
I do like this a lot for all the reasons we talked about last week, but I think it's fine that this just didn't work on you, or I guess Schrodinger's worked on you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it has to be doing something, and I'm going to basically repeat something I said to somebody else earlier this week, which is like people think they want more of their beloved characters, but often that's not really true. Like if we got 6 pages of Bev doing the dishes, you wouldn't be like, that was so satisfying. It's like, no, what's satisfying is the role she plays in this particular story, that there's actually something relevant to Bev specifically in this story, and then she plays her role and then she's gone, and that feels good because there's actually something there. There's some narrative there. I think where it really doesn't work for me is where it literally is just like, and then this character is also there, and you're like, I don't like this. This actually just like waters down the character for me. This makes me like this less. I honestly, like I often agree. Talks you that sometimes I really don't like this because I'm just like, I would rather this character not be in this. It thins out the gruel, to like overexpose things like that. I feel like this happened a bit in the MCU, honestly. Anyway,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I liked it in the MCU, and sometimes it was grating. I think it depends, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I agree.
Pear Jane says, this question is so hard because honestly, my favorite is Bevy from the Levee and Richie from the Ditchy. This scene makes me smile fit to split my head and fills my heart with warm, gooey love. In fact, having just finished it for the third time, I can say that this book, more than any other King story, consistently fills my heart with warm, gooey love. My second favorite is Joyland, for the part where I yelled, "OMG, what?" If you know, you know.
I
I
know.
don't know.
I know.
Oh, okay. Well, good for you. And then the non-King answer is I don't have one. I read Carrie when I was 11, so I've lived in King's Tower levels for 37 years, 77% of my life, folks, and that percentage is getting higher every day. I don't have a relationship with other creators the way I have with him, and he lives in his multiverse so fully that I've yet to come across a book that feels truly standalone. Doom McKee, maybe? But I'll bet that he's cooking up some other Florida story that will refer to that abandoned key destroyed in a storm in the next decade or so. I could say Doctor Who or every long-running comic, but really those are decades-long single bodies of work, not independent works that weave into other stories. Bottom line, it takes a lot of skill and arrogance to weave your earlier unrelated work into your new stuff. Still, because it can easily be the winky reference and arrogance because you're assuming anyone's bothered to read anything else you've written. The joy of Stephen King is that he seems to do it not to build a multiverse, but because he just genuinely loves his own stories.
That's such a good point. That's it to me. It's like I love that it is arrogance on some level. I mean, it does take a little bit of arrogance to put yourself in your big magnum opus 7-book series, right? Like just a little bit. And yeah, I agree. Like I don't think King ever set out to build a multiverse. I would even argue, even with the Dark Tower stuff, like it never was intended to be this literal center of his multiverse. It just he likes his stories so much. Like
Yeah.
like he genuinely like this is ultimately why did he write about Richie and Bev again? Because he loves them. And he probably got so excited when he realized he could go back to Derry in the 50s and do this specific thing in this time. Like, why does the portal send them back to 1958? I mean,
Yeah.
A, because he wanted Jake to have to be there a long time, but B, because then he can go back to Derry.
Right. I mean, it's debatable which one of those ideas came first, right?
Yeah, right.
Who knows? And I was thinking about this a bit. I was thinking about my own writing, and I was like canvassing the things that I've written over my life, and I've written I've written a wide variety of things, but I've written a lot of things that are kind of similar-ish feeling, and I'm like, there's a core here where it would be very easy to make these stories all be in the same universe and have little cute references to each other if I wanted to. And I think that's just because every person has like their thing that they want to say that's core to them. It's part of their soul. And it's going to express itself in similar ways because they're going to write stories like the stories that they like. And they're going to say things that are the things that they have to say. And so it just kind of happens that authors end up creating shared universes that like without even really fully intending to. Like it always tickles me that like most if not all of Neil Stephenson's books are connected, and he's the last author in the world where it would like make sense for it to be a multiverse, but it's more just like or a shared universe. But I think for him it's more just like, I noticed that I have written stories that plausibly connect together, so I might as well make them connect together.
Sure.
Anyway, yeah.
No, I like that. All right, Brambino 1996 says Neil Gaiman's short story A Study in Emerald is a 2-for-1 deal. Not only do you get a Lovecraftian Hellbeast, you get them in the world of Sherlock Holmes. If you're a fan of either, you should check the story out. It's a lot of fun. So Brambino kind of took the answer that we offered as like, this could be an author returning to someone else's stomping ground. And that's fun too, right? I mean, it's different, but it's fun.
Yeah. What's funny is everyone loves to revisit Lovecraft stomping grounds.
Yeah, sure.
Cuthbert's Lookout says, I don't know if you can totally call it returning to their stomping grounds or not, but the references to each other's works from Stephen King to Joe Hill always made me smile. I don't have time to dig through my books to find the references, but I remember King referencing Charles Manx from Nosferatu in Dr. Sleep. And Hill references Derry and other King characters at times. It makes me happy that we're seeing other levels of the tower from a skilled writer who has probably known more about King, King's thoughts than anyone else except Tabitha. At times, Joe has reminded me more of Bachman than King, and his works are also his own, if you haven't checked him out. I still have
Yeah,
it, by the
Joe
way.
Hill really likes to uh, like almost to the point where some of like his 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 universe is just the Stephen King universe a
Uh-huh.
little bit. And I find it ironic that he like intentionally goes by Joe Hill to not like bring the king into it. Like he wants to, be a writer on his own terms and like not just Stephen King's son. But then of course, like can't help himself but also write a lot of the stuff into the existing universe that his father created. Like there's something deliciously ironic about that that I love to death.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's out of love, right? It's like
Yeah, yeah,
professionally, he doesn't want to ride on his father's coattails, but then he just can't help himself because he loves his father's stories.
yeah, yep. TN Bugdoc says, as a Lovecraft fan, I love trips back to Arkham and dear old Miskatonic University. This lovely town and institute of higher learning weaves nicely into many of his tales, especially the Cthulhu mythos. They have spilled over into so many other places, including good old Scooby-Doo. If you're ever lucky enough to visit, I would highly recommend a visit to the library to peek at the Necronomicon by Al-Hazred, but expect to be grilled by the library staff about your intentions when you request it. The internet has many MU treasures available for purchase. Over the years, I have been able to obtain some nice trinkets for my office wall, including a diploma in parapsychology and a medallion of the snake god Yig. Arkham, Miskatonic have become such iconic places that they almost seem real.
It's funny, I forget that Arkham is, from Lovecraft and not Batman.
Yeah.
Um, so does this hint that Batman, Scooby Doo, and Cthulhu are all in the same universe together?
Yep. Definitely.
It must. Love it. Baby Can You Dig Your Sam says, I do think this is one area where the Marvel universe really worked. It was always nice to see someone pop up in another movie or show, especially when you had no idea it was coming. And for sheer laughs, I have to mention the brief appearance of Trading Places Duke brothers living in the gutter in Coming to America. I don't remember that. I'm pretty sure I've seen Coming to America, but maybe I hadn't seen Trading Places at the time, and thus didn't get that reference. That's very fun. Um, yeah, I mean, as for the MCU, like, yeah, I think it works for me most of the time, but then there are some instances where I'm just like, I think I think I can nail down specifically what I don't like in the MCU is when a character shows up and they're just not quite behaving like themselves, and you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, they wouldn't really be here. They have no reason to be here. They're not speaking like themselves. They're maybe their hair looks a little bit wrong. Like this just feels fake to me. Feels
Sure.
artificial.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the norm, but I think it pokes up here and there. So anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like the MCU version of it working well for me is the end game time travel plot, where it's just like
hmm
essentially we're gonna go back to all these scenes from our original movies, and like it kind of surprises me that worked so well on me. I remember when I realized this was the plot of Endgame. As I was watching it, how excited I got at that prospect. It just felt like a fun idea, and also just like the ultimate culmination of this whole project was revisiting the place where it all started. Was just a fun concept.
yeah.
But yeah, I think MCU is really hit or miss for me with this stuff these days.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that was narratively, like, that was dramatically interesting because the specific things they do in the past are all highly character centric. So
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Did you watch the Deadpool trailer yet?
I did.
Man, I just think I'm too old for this shit now.
I basically just see the Deadpool movies as comedy, so I think I'll
Yeah.
enjoy them on that level. But
I mean, I've really
um,
liked the two Deadpool movies I've seen. So like I should be excited for this, but everyone seems like really jazzed by this trailer and I was just like, I'll see it.
yeah, drag Hugh Jackman out of retirement one more time. I love that we already had the movie where he was so old and died. And then they're like, you got one more in you, right, Hugh? I know you can do it, man.
Well, after Logan, both Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman said they were done with these characters. That was the sign off for these characters. And they have both gone back on that.
Oh my God. That's great. That's so funny. Yeah.
It's just someone shows up at your house with a truck full of money and you can't help yourself. All right. Next is DJ Nedelko, who says, I can't think of many authors returning back to their old worlds other than Stephen King. However, the one alternate example I can think of is a fantastic one. The Sandman by Neil Gaiman. This story has been brought up on the show before, and Matt and Scott still probably haven't read it, but we'll let it slide. You are correct. Basic premise from the original series written in 1989 is that this cult that tries to summon and imprison Death. To their chagrin, they end up trapping Death's brother, Dream, aka the Sandman. What follows is a beautifully written and illustrated series that ran all the way up until 1996. One question that came up with the original series was, how did Dream manage to allow himself to be captured in the first place? We knew he was in his weakened state and doing something very important for the universe, but we didn't know much of the backstory other than that. It wasn't until 2013 when Gaiman put out the Sandman Overture where we get the answer to that question. Sometimes the mystery is best left unsolved, but with the creative team involved in the series, any Sandman content is great content, and the answer to the question was satisfactory enough for me. Give it a read sometime.
Cool.
Didn't we read like the first 2 issues of that for a show years ago?
I didn't. You might have.
No, then I probably just did it on my own from recommendations, and then
I think
haven't gone from there.
We went on a kick for a period where we were reading graphic novels and talking about graphic novels, so you might have picked it up at that. Yeah, no, I think that's what happened. It was around when we were reading.
I know which one you're talking about. I do not remember the name of it at all. Yeah,
I can see it, but I can't remember it. Yeah, anyway, I haven't. I'll get around to it one of these days. All right. Finally, from Complicated 9519. I'd have to say my favorite instance of an author returning to their old stomping grounds would have to be Christopher Paolini, primarily because I couldn't think of anything else. But the author of Aragon started writing his stories back when he was in college. His 3-part inheritance cycle about a young man and his dragon turned into a wonderful fantasy story, the writing growing as he grew. After the 4th book, Inheritance, I believe he took a long break to once again return to the setting in his small short story collection, The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm, returning back to the point of view for 3 characters, Murtagh, Angela, and Aragon, respectively. After this, Paolini went on to write his first sci-fi novel, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, a beautiful space-oriented novel. But in 2023, Paolini released a new novel called Murtagh, returning back to the world of Alagasia and giving us a new story with Dragon's half-brother Murtagh as the main protagonist. The story starts the same way the short story The Fork does and continues on from there. It was wonderful to return to that crazy, fantastical world, and I hope some more stories continue to come out of it. That sounds fun. I don't know anything about this, though.
Yeah, I've never read those books, so I can't comment, but that sounds cool. Yeah. I mean, it's always interesting seeing authors go back and make that decision. Like, we've talked about Dr. Sleep and The Shining so much, but just like the idea of like, I never planned to return to this, but here I am. I couldn't help myself. Felt like I had more to say or more to explore there. Yeah.
Right.
All right, Matt, what is our question for next week?
The past is obdurate, but it's not the only thing. What are some other things you describe as obdurate in Stephen King's works or elsewhere?
Okay, so step 1, everyone go look up the definition of obdurate. And then just talk about some stuff that I just love this word, and I felt like we had to do a question on it. I love this word so much. So, yeah,
it
should be
me
fun.
Too. You know, by the way, we had an easier question, and we decided to go with this one because I think sometimes it's better to have kind of a weird question, a bit of a head scratcher. I think it results in more creative and weird answers than perhaps like the easier, what was your favorite blank type questions do.
I agree. I mean, this week's question was a tougher one, right? And so we got less responses than we typically do. But I really liked the responses we got. So I'm right there with you.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, that is next week's question. And next week we will see us continue with 11/22/63. As I mentioned, we'll be reading chapters 9, 10, and 11. We're starting part 3 of the novel, making our way through it, and we're going to see what happens in 2011 after the events of this week's chapters. Pretty exciting stuff. I know you're probably pretty anxious to find out, Matt.
Sure am. All right. Remember, you can reach us via email at kingslingerspod@gmail.com or over on x.com @kingslingerspod. And of course, the subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia is a great place to hang out with other slingers.
If you don't want to listen to the show anymore after that, I understand. But if you do, and you want to get the exclusive, only available in one place if you podcast me, then podcast me mug, you can do it at our merch store. You head to doofmedia.myshopify.com and you can get that mug and a bunch of other mugs and a whole lot of cool gear to doof yourself up.
That's that was just as good as mine, Scott. That's great. Anyway, if you still like this show and you don't want to go cancel your membership, then head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia, and you can donate some money to us, and we'll keep making these stupid jokes, and you'll also get the ability to listen to us talk about King adaptations and the Castle Rock TV show, which we're gonna talk about a little bit more coming up pretty soon, actually.
Yeah, pretty soon we're gonna finish off season 1 and move on to season 2. And I was thinking, Matt, there was actually a show called Welcome to Derry that's coming. It's an anthology show that takes place in Derry. It's coming to Max in 2025, and maybe Castle Talk would be a perfect time to talk about that show.
Perfect timing.
I actually don't know when it's coming out. I know it says 2025. I don't know the details, so it might not line up as perfectly as I want it to, but I just had Derry on the brain.
Yeah, it's not perfect timing at all, actually, but it's compelling though.
I don't know why I found that so funny. Just I don't think I've ever heard someone say it's compelling.
It's compelling though. It's compelling.
All right, folks. If you cannot afford to help us out on Patreon, that is okay. You can share this podcast with your loved ones. You can travel back in time and convince your younger self to listen to it. You can also always leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or elsewhere. This week's Spotlight review comes from Disco Stew, who gives us 5 stars and says, "The guiding light of King's universe. Kingslinger stands as a testament to the power of great storytelling and partnership. Matt and Scott's dynamic is a perfect match for the epic scope of the Dark Tower series and beyond. Their insight and engaging discussions not only illuminate the path for constant readers, but also warmly welcome newcomers to King's vast literary landscape. It's a podcast that constantly delivers, earning its 5 stars with every episode. Long days and pleasant nights." That is an incredibly kind review. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was very heartwarming. Thank you so much.
I feel bad about all those horrible jokes we made. You sure about that 5 stars every episode Disco Stew? Every single one? Even this one?
90% we'll call it.
I'll take it. So thank you, Disco Stew, and thank you everyone who sends those in. They make us happy, and they help us. It's not just about making us feel good, although that is a big part of it, but those reviews do help us. It helps people find the show. It helps with algorithms. There's a lot of stuff that I don't understand, but as I am led to believe, they are an important factor. So we appreciate you taking the time to do them.
Yes, thank you.
All right, folks, next week, a few more chapters, some more time traveling. We'll be back with 11/22/63, chapters 9 through 11. We'll see you next week. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.